Hello everyone! Today I'm going to talk about something that was requested, suggested, explaining how Magic the Gathering works. It's a game. Before I start, I want to make a few notes. First of all, out of experience from reactions of people, I'm apparently not very good at explaining, and this is very difficult. It's not difficult, but there are many rules, and I'm sorry if you don't understand it or if I mess things up. It's just I'm not the best person to do this, probably. Second, maybe you can tell a little bit by my voice. I'm having a cold right now. I hope you don't find my voice as nice. I hope you find my voice still nice. Maybe it's nice, different. I'll probably be taking a few breaks to drink some water or cough or sneeze or whatever, so there may be more cuts than usual in a video in which I'm talking. But I really wanted to make this video now, so I'll just have to do it while I'm not feeling too great. You can probably see by the lighting that I have my laptop here. There is a basic handbook, and I have it here so as to guide me a little bit. Maybe I'll read some parts as well, just to give you an idea. There's also an elaborate handbook, and that's 200 pages long. So when I found that one, I was a little scared, but then I found the basic handbook and it's only 30 pages. So I guess I'll get started, because there are so many things I don't really know where to begin. So I guess I'll just start. Magic the Gathering is a strategic card game, and you build your own deck. So you can buy cards and you can build your own deck. A deck consists of at least 60 cards. And if you know Hearthstone, it's a little bit like that, so kind of the same concept, but then bigger and, well, with real cards, which also makes it a bit of an expensive hobby. So I'll warn you before you start doing this, because you'll want to buy more and more cards. So that's a little bit annoying, but still it's fun. The main downside, I think, is that it'll only get fun after you've spent quite some money on it, because if you've built one deck and then you play it a couple of times and then you're kind of bored with it and you want to build something new, and before you have a deck that really works well, you have already spent quite a bit of money. So that's, yeah, I mean, it's a good business model for them. But if you're short on cash, then you shouldn't do this. You should only do it. So I don't have much to spend, so it's kind of annoying. But I'd say that you should only do this when you have enough to spend, or if you don't get bored or frustrated easily. Okay, so I guess you can say you can kind of divide cards in two. You have mana and all the other cards, and you need to put down mana so you can play the other cards. There are 5 colors of mana, and there's also colorless. Maybe we'll get to that later, but maybe we'll skip it today. I have all the colors here. I think it's you can put multiple colors in one deck, because sometimes the best cards are multicolored, but if you don't have the color on the board, kind of, then you can't play them. So that can be quite frustrating. The first deck that I ever built was 3 colors, and I've had multiple times that I couldn't play the cards I wanted to because I did not have the right colors of mana, so that's really annoying. But first, a little bit more about the cards. This is what I'm going to read from the handbook, I think, because each color has its own characteristics, basically. So let's start with white. White plains. I'll just read it. White is the color of law, order and structure. The sprawling plains, populated by soldiers, clerics and angels, provide white mana. You send coordinated armies of smaller creatures into battle to teach the enemy a lesson. So these are very self-righteous people. Then you have green, and my first deck was green, red, blue, and I really like green because green has many very strong creatures, and that just appeals to me as an animal person, I guess, even though you send them into battle to die, but whatever. Green. Green magic is about growth, life and brute force. The forests overflow with green mana, which represents the pulse of nature. You empower your creatures with the predatory might of nature and dominate through sheer size. So I guess you can see why this would appeal to me as a biologist, right? So green has lots of strong creatures. Of course there are always other things, but it's the main thing. Or maybe it's just the main thing because of my starter set. But I'll get to that later because I'm going to talk a little bit about the decks that I've built. Sort of. I'm not really... I don't have enough cards to really build stuff. I've bought 2 intro packs and one I did basically from boosters, but I'll get to that later. I'm throwing around terms that you're not familiar with yet, maybe. The next color is blue, and blue is a really annoying color. People know this. Since Magic Gathering is pretty big, and there's this YouTube show called Spell Slingers, I think, and in there he plays Magic with his friends, and recently he played Magic with what seemed like a long-term friend because of kind of inside jokes, and his friend played a blue-black deck, and the host really hates blue with all his heart, and after the episode you really know why. I can put a link in the description. You'll get a good idea if you can watch a game as well. So here's blue. Blue magic relies on trickery and manipulation. Islands provide blue mana, the color of the deep sea and the endless sky. You work behind the scenes, controlling your environment completely before making a move. So there are really a lot of annoying spells in with blue, for instance, or creatures with really annoying abilities. So if you control the blue deck, that's extremely fun. If you have to play against it, it's really annoying. Then we have red. I'll read it again. Red magic erupts with fire, frenzy, and storms of rock and lava. Red mana comes from mountains and volcanoes. You act quickly and recklessly, channeling your wild emotions to summon mighty dragons or crush the ground your enemies walk on. So red is sometimes a good color to start with, I guess, because there are many very straightforward spells, just strong damage dealing stuff, which can be really nice. black. Black magic is about death, disease, and power at any cost. Black mana comes from dank swamps, where things fester and rot. You are as selfish and twisted as the undead creatures and unspeakable horrors you command. So yeah, of course you always have the dark stuff there as well. And one thing I can say about magic, maybe I'll have examples of this a little bit later, but the art on the cards is always really great. And when it comes to black cards, it's sometimes really horrible and quite graphic. So I think that's why this is rated PG-13 or something. So these are the cards that are also in your deck, and when you draw these, you can lay these down without cost, because this is the currency that you pay your other cards with. So if you don't have mana, you usually can't play cards. I think we can move on to what a card other than this looks like. So this is an example of a card. If you really like your cards, you put them in sleeves so that they don't get damaged. Another way to spend money. I guess I'll try to explain this card a bit. So on top you have the name of the card, which is in this case Leaf Gilder. Here you have the mana cost, so you need to have one green mana as a forest and one mana of another color. So it can be green, but it can also be any other color. And that is what you need to pay in the form of tapping them to put this card down. It says here that it's a creature, and there are a few other types as well, and I will discuss them after I've shown you this card. So this is a creature, and it's an elf creature, in this case an elf druid. The fact that it's an elf is important for this deck, and I'll explain later why. Here are its power and toughness. So when I attack with this, it deals 2 damage, and it only has 1 health point. And then there may be activatables or something. Some cards can do stuff, and in this case I can use this creature the same way as I can use a mana, so that can be real handy. I can tap this one, and then it'll act like a forest mana. And then on many of them, because there's a story behind every card basically, sometimes you have an italic story on the card, and this is just for fun basically, and I rarely read it, but sometimes it's it can be kind of funny. Adrian, perfect of Liz Alana, ordered hundreds of trees uprooted and rearranged into a pattern he deemed beautiful. Thus the Gilt Leaf Wood was born. Okay, so yeah, that can just be extra information. So there are different kinds of cards, and the main ones are the creature that I already, and then there are 2 kind of spells that you can only cast on your own terms, basically on your own turn. One is sorcery, so this is a spell that can do pretty much anything, and then there are enchantments, and you stick them to creatures or artifacts. I don't think I'm going to talk about artifacts. I haven't really prepared this, so I'll just see where I go. yeah, I've been thinking about whether to show you this one card because it's a little bit graphic, like I told you. I have a sorcery card here, Macabre Waltz, and it says return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, then discard a card. It's black and it doesn't look very pretty, it's creepy. But it makes sense because you summon 2 creatures from the dead, basically, so yeah. And then you have an enchantment. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -3 power and -2 toughness. And it's called Weight of the Underworld. So it's also dark, but it's not as gross or something. And you can also enchant creatures. You're probably not gonna enchant your own creature, so if there's a really strong creature from your opponent, then you can play this on that creature. And then you have instants, so those you can play. There are rules, of course, but you can play them basically anytime. And this one I have here is Might of the Masses. Target creature gets +1/+1, +1 power, +1 toughness until end of turn for each creature you control. So if you have a big army on the table, this is a good card. And you basically only get a great army on the table if there are many cheap creatures, and this is a deck with lots of cheap creatures. Oh, maybe I skipped one thing on the card, I think. Here you can see a small symbol, and that symbol says from which set it is, because I think they release 2 or 3 things every year. It goes pretty fast, maybe more. I'm not always very up to date on this stuff, but this is the latest. I think it came out 2 weeks ago. I don't know when you'll see this, so it's probably longer when you watch or listen. But and I got this from an intro pack. This is what an intro pack looks like, and when you start with Magic, then this is probably the best way to start, because this includes basically a playable deck already. And there are also, like it says here, 2 boosters inside. And the booster is what makes some of this stuff so addictive, because a booster contains 15 cards, more or less random. And I skipped another thing from the cards. I'm working this really great, because this symbol, when it's black, it's a common card. When it's silver, it's uncommon. When it's gold, it's rare. And when it's kind of an orange color, I mean, do they call it? Yeah, red orange, is mythic rare. So you can kind of understand how this pattern goes. And I think there's always at least 1 rare in a booster and 2 or 3 uncommons. There's the chance that there's more, and there's a chance that you have a mythic rare in there. And since Magic the Gathering is pretty big, if you have a rare card, it's actually worth a lot of money most of the time. So yeah. So the booster is kind of like a gamble you take, and you'll never know what you're gonna get from him. And it turns out that most of the time you get is crap. Those are cards that don't fit the deck that you're currently building, or cards that you already have 5 times, and it can be quite frustrating. So yeah, but that's why it's also pretty addictive. So The intro pack that I showed you is still closed. It's for a friend of a friend. And this was mine, I opened it. And inside, so in front here you had the deck that was already finished, including mana and everything. A deck that's basically just playable. And in the back you have this small booklet, and yeah, there are some things on here that I also didn't talk about, like planeswalkers, because I think they're really weird and I don't have them. They're usually really rare. And I think I'll read this because this is how a turn goes, because I haven't talked about that at all. Each player needs a deck of magic cards and a way to track life totals. You start with 20 life, and I usually use a D20 for that, but this is a special one because this actually the numbers align, and if you want to really use this as a dice, then they should be on opposite sides and stuff, so it's not the one that you can use for playing Dungeons and Dragons or anything. So this is a life counter. Shuffle your deck, then draw a hand of 7 cards. The player who takes the first turn won't draw a card that turn, because, well, you're starting, so you're always one step ahead, you know? Okay, so here are the parts of a turn. You have the beginning phase. First is the untap step. So when you have mana on the table, it's not called the table. I should look up what it's called, because it's called something else. I know it's called something else. The battlefield, right? So when you have mana on the battlefield and you use that previous turn, that means that you tap it. So you can only use mana once. And when it's your turn again, you untap everything, so you can use all your mana again. So that's the first thing you do when your turn's starting. Then there's the upkeep. This is a part of the turn that most of the time isn't really anything, but if there are cards, if you have cards on the battlefield that state that something happened during upkeep, then this is the moment. And then there's the draw step. Draw a card from your library, from your deck. Then you go on to the first main phase. There are 2. You may play 1 land from your hand by putting it onto the battlefield. You may cast creatures, sorceries and other spells if you can pay for them. When you're done with that and you want to combat, then these are the steps from combat. Beginning of combat step. So if anything happens, then that's the time. For if there are things mentioned on cards and stuff. Second step is declare attacker's step. Tap every creature you want to attack your opponent with. A creature can't attack the turn you cast it unless it has haste. So there are many things that can be on the cards, as you can hear right now, and it's impossible for me to talk them all over, but maybe I'll talk about a few that are specific to my decks just to give you an idea. Then declare blockers step. Each untapped defending creature may block 1 attacker. Creatures don't have to block, so this is the part of your opponent. So if you're gonna attack with a few creatures, then your opponent can decide whether he wants to block creatures with his own, or if he'll just take the damage, or maybe he has instants that he can play. Then comes the combat damage step. Blockers and the attackers they're blocking deal damage to each other equal to their power, the first number in the lower right corner. If a creature takes damage at least equal to the second number toughness, it's destroyed. Unblockable attackers deal damage to your opponent, who loses that much life. Pretty straightforward, right? And then there's the end of combat step. Then there's another main phase. You may play a land if you haven't played one yet, and you may cast spells again, so it may be wise if you think that your opponent has a spell that can deal damage to all creatures or something, and you don't want it to happen to creatures you still have in your hand, so you can first attack and put those on afterwards. Or maybe you could have drawn, maybe you drew cards because of attacking or whatever. There are so many reasons. And then there's the ending phase. It's the end step, and cleanup step. So damaged creatures on the battlefield heal. So if there was a creature that you attacked with and it was blocked and basically has 1 health left, then it heals again, and it just has its toughness at maximum again. So I don't have to think that I'm being very clear or anything, but then again, watching an ASMR video probably isn't the best way to learn magic anyway, as I hope that you are very relaxed and I'm not really paying attention anyway. So yeah, I guess I can show you a little bit more my deck. So this one's green and black, and this one really revolves around elf creatures, and there are many creatures that give certain effects if you have a certain amount of elves on the battlefield, or they get buffs of all kinds of stuff. I'll just kind of read a few. I had one right here. Yeah, so this is the rare card from my deck. There's always at least one rare card in the intro pack, and it's on the front, and as you can see, it's shiny, it's gold foiled, and there's always a small chance that a card you get is foiled, and then it's worth more because it's rare if it's foiled. And this, of course, not very much because it's in every intro pack, but still. So this is a legendary creature. It's got 3 power and 4 toughness. It has reach, which means that this creature can block creatures with flying. So creatures can have flying, and if you only have creatures who don't have flying, the flying just fly over them and can deal damage to you without your creatures able to block. And other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. So as long as this card is on the battlefield, all your elf creatures get a buff, basically. And whenever this card, so Dwinnen Guildleaf Dane, attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking elf you control. So like I've said before, this deck revolves around getting lots of cheap elf creatures onto the battlefield and just overwhelm your opponent. And this makes the elf creatures stronger with the +1/+1, and it gives you life if you attack. So this is a really valuable card. It makes sense because it's basically the best card in the deck, I guess. Although this one's also pretty nice. It's uncommon, as you can see by the silver, and it's an elf shaman of the pack. It's multicolored. You have to pay at least 1 green, 1 black, and 1 of another color. Well, not another color, 1 color of your choice, basically. When shaman of the pack enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So that's also very nice if you already have a lot of them on the battlefield. It says target opponent because you can actually play Magic with more than one person. It just takes really, really long. I've played Magic with 4 other people at once, so we were 5. But then one game lasts like hours. So everybody's turns take very long after a while. What kind of other stuff do I have? Oh, this one's also nice. As you may imagine, if you have lots of cheap creatures, then you can play maybe 2 or 3 of them in a turn, but you can only draw 1 card per turn, so after a while your hand's just empty. Then this one's really handy. It's an elf creature. It has trample, which means that if this card attacks and it gets blocked, but its power is greater than the toughness of the creature that it blocked, then that excess damage is dealt to the player. And then there's the active. This just happens when you put it into the battlefield. When Sylvan Messenger enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. So you just draw them and lay them in the open. Put all elf cards revealed this way into your hand, which is really nice, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So I've used it a couple of times now, and I've almost got 2 or 3 elf creatures in my hand this way, because if you have a deck full of elf creatures, then that really works well, right? So this is one example of how you can make a deck with good synergy. That's always what you're looking for, though. Cards that work together like this. It's not always as with creatures, it can also work differently. My boyfriend right now has an artifact deck, so works a little bit the same, and all the artifacts interact with each other, and he has creatures that can do extra stuff if there are artifacts. He has, for example, a creature that has flying as long as he has an artifact on the table, and he summons a lot of artifact flying tokens, which is really annoying. And I have two other decks, but I don't think I'll be able to explain them now, because actually my throat is getting pretty sore. I'm coughing constantly, so I've already had to, it's going to be cut so many times, this video, but maybe I can do this another time. I mean, I haven't really gotten through how it really works yet, but well, it's going to be impossible for me anyway to play it on camera or anything, so I thought I would have done more tapping or stuff during the video, but I've mostly talked. It's just a bit too bad because I thought my nails were pretty. Well, anyway, I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know if you want more about the Magic. I mean, I can probably make a whole another video about my other 2 decks and a few other rules. Yeah, hopefully I will be doing better next time I film something. And I'll see you guys soon.